The wind howled through the trees of a quiet valley town. It was a peaceful place with the houses and the neat wooden fences and a large backyards, and where the night brought a deep, heavy silence for the 12-year-old Thomas. However, the night was not peaceful at all, and was a time of fear. Thomas lived with his grandfather, Arthur, a retired car partner whose hands were rough from years of hard work, but whose eyes always held a calm, rationing kindness. They lived in an old cottage at the edge of the woods, surrounded by a large apple orchard. Lately, a frightening rumor had spread through the town. People whispered about a creature called the Shadowy Thief. It was not a physical animal, nor it was a ghost. It was a monster made entirely of darkness, appearing only when the sun completely vanished and disappearing the moment the very first light of dawn cracked the horizon. Unlike the monsters in the old scary movies, the shadow saved didn't want to hurt anyone physically. It wanted something else. It fed on human worry, anger, and fear. It was said the creature could slip through the smallest crack under a doorway, hovering over a sleeping person like a thick, heavy blanket of fog. It would fill their minds with the bad dreams and terrible worries until they woke up the next morning, feeling completely exhausted, sad, and empty. Thomas was terrified. Even so, his grandfather always reminded him to trust in God's ultimate protection. The boy heart would race every evening as the night sky turned from the orange to the dark purple. He would lock the door twice. Pull the heavy curtains tightly across the windows and hide deep under the blankets, staring at the dark corners of his bedroom. One evening, after they finished their night prayers together, Thomas sat at the kitchen table, nervously tapping his fingers against his glass of milk. "You are very restless tonight, Thomas," Arthur said softly, pouring hot tea into a mug. "The night was created for us to rest our minds and bodies. Why do you treat it like an enemy?" "This is a thief, grandfather," Thomas whispered, glancing toward the dark window. "Our neighbor said it did visit his cousin last week. The man hasn't, the man hasn't smiled or spoken a word since. He just stares at the floor. What if he comes here? Our cottage is old. There is gaps in the window frames." Arthur smiled gently, wrinkles around his eyes softening. He sat down across from his grandson. "People love to make stories bigger than they really are to pass the time. But tell me, Thomas, what is a shadow?" It's, a sh- "It's just what happens when the light is blocked," Thomas replied, remembering his school lessons. "Exactly," Arthur said, leaning forward. A shadow has no power of its own. It cannot exist without light, and it cannot create darkness. The thief is no different. It cannot create fear inside you. It only picks on the worries you are already holding into. But I have a lot of worries, Thomas admitted, his voice shaking. I'm worried about failing my math test. I'm upset about the kids who laughed at me today, and I'm scared of being all alone if something bad happens to you. The old man reached across the table and covered Thomas' trembling hand with his own large, warm hand. Those feelings are completely normal, my boy, but keeping them locked inside. Your heart, before you go to bed, is like leaving the front door open wide for the robber. Tonight, we will protect ourselves, probably not with the iron locks, but with faith and a peaceful mind. The night, the sky grew unusually dark, as thick, strange fog rolled down from the hills, hiding the stars and the moon. The entire valley became dead silent. Even the crickets stopped chirping, and the neighborhood dogs curled tightly in their baskets, refusing to make a sound. Thomas lay in his bed. He had washed up and said his prayers, but the count of fear in his chest was still there. Around midnight, a strange, freezing chill filled the bedroom. The temperature dropped so fast that Thomas could see his own breath turning into a mist in the air. Then came a sound. It wasn't a roar or a growl. It was a low, scraping noise, like a dry autumn leaves bowling across the stone floor. It was coming from the ceiling. Thomas froze, his heart pounding in the chest. Slowly, he looked up. Seeping through the small gaps in the old wind ceiling was something darker than the night itself. It looked like a thick, moving ink, weaving together to form a large, floating shadow. It had no face, but where its eyes should have been, two hollow spaces glowed with a dim, icy purple light. The shadow thief has arrived. The creature lowered itself slowly, spreading out until it hung directly over Thomas' bed. Thomas felt a heavy, suffocating pressure on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, his mind was flooded with negative thoughts. He remembered every mistake he had ever made, every mean thing he had ever said, and the terrifying thought of being completely abandoned. The monster was using his own worries to trap him. Thomas tried to scream for his grandfather, but his throat felt completely dry. He couldn't move his arms or legs. The cold, glowing eyes of the creature came closer and closer, ready to drain away every bit of hope he had left. The shadow had no power of its own. His grandfather's words suddenly echoed In his mind, the dark only seemed terrifying when you forget who rules the light. Thomas closed his eyes. He stopped trying to fight the monster physically. Instead, he turned his focus inward, searching for his face and the peaceful lessons his grandfather had taught him. He reminded himself that God is the creator of everything, the protector of the weak, and far greater than any shadow. With a deep breath, Thomas opened his eyes, looked directly at the creature, and spoke clearly into the dark. You have no powers here. God is my protector, and he never sleeps. He watches over me when I am awake, and he guides me when I am asleep. The moment the words left his mouth, a warm feeling spread through his chest. The heavy weight on his ribs vanished. The creature hissed, a sharp, angry sound, like water being thrown into a hot stove, and is smoky from pouring back toward the ceiling. Seeing the monster retreat, Thomas felt a sudden burst of courage. He sat up in his bed, his voice growing stronger and louder. You cannot feed on my fears, because I am choosing to let go. I trust the Creator of heavens and earth, the Most High, the Most Powerful. No shadow can stand against His light. A soft, comforting warmth seemed to fill the entire room, emulating the dark corners, the thick, freezing fog that the creature brought with it began to disappear. The shadow safe twisted and thrashed violently in the air, its dark shape breaking apart into loose, chaotic smoke. It tried to push its scary thoughts back into Thomas' hand, but the boy face acted like an invincible shield. The fear that had filled the creature was completely gone, replaced by a total peace. With one final, faint whisper of smoke, the monster shuddered completely. The dark ink broke into 1,000 tiny particles that melted away into the fresh morning air. Thomas blinked. The freezing chill was gone. Through the window, the very first beautiful blue light. For morning was beginning to color the sky. The birds outside began to chirp, welcoming the day. The bedroom door cracked open, and Grandfather Arthur stepped in. He didn't have his lantern because the morning light was already filling the house. He looked at Thomas' calm, smiling face and nodded knowingly. You look like you slept wonderfully, Thomas, the old man said gently. Thomas sat up, feeling lighter and happier than he had in months. He looked out at the sunrise and smiled. I did, Grandfather. I finally realized that the dark isn't scary at all, as long as you keep the light of faith in your heart. From that night on, the shadow thief never returned to the cottage by the orchard because it could never find a single worry left to steal.